Tawana, let's go ahead and get started.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. And I really, truly appreciate Allison doing this for us. Today, we're going to talk about transitioning tips for launching your youth into adulthood, which everybody knows you don't want your child sitting on the couch all their life. You want to make sure they're up and being productive in society. What I do, my position is a student hireability navigator, and I work in Central Texas area. There are several of us in each region that work and do the same type of work that I do. So they're out and about everywhere, and we can be located. And I will put my information in the chat. What I'm responsible for doing as a student hireability navigator is ensuring that our kids are getting their pre-S, which is considered their pre-employment transition services, which include post-secondary counseling, work readiness, job skills, um, making sure that they're ready for self-advocacy because they have to advocate for themselves when they're out there and about and you're not there anymore to help them. And so we want to make sure that they're ready when they get ready to go to school or into the workforce, and they have the sources and the supplies that they need and resources. Like I said, I'm here in Central Texas. I cover a large area. um, and a lot of counties and ISDs because I have 19 ISDs that I cover, and we have four Texas Workforce Solutions built areas that we cover, which are Killeen, Lampasas, Rockdale, and Carpus Cove. So we're spread out, and there's, like I said, that's my area. There's others that are here. We just want to give you the information so that you can be successful and that your child can be successful in the real world. So I just appreciate Consolidated Planning Group for helping me put this on today, and you can take it away.
Thank you so much, Tawana. So yeah, you said a lot, and the interesting thing is, Tawana and I were kind of chatting before we got started today, and you see TWS next to her name for Texas Workforce Solutions, as opposed to TWC, Texas Workforce Commission. And for a lot of us, that starts being confusing because sometimes the some of the things that you do as it relates to helping our kids with disabilities, with some of the skills and some of the things that you were talking about, some of it seems overlapping to what TWC does and some of the things that we've heard about with vocational rehab. So today we're not talking about vocational rehab, but because you're with TWS and then the kind of the connection with TWC and the importance of vocational rehab for your students. So whether you serve the area of people in Houston or Fort Bend or wherever, it doesn't matter. There are coordinators in your area directly that will work with you and your students. But basically, understanding that there are VR services, vocational rehab services available for your student with disabilities from basically age 14 to 22 to help them find competitive employment, learning more about that and how your child may qualify for that service, help them find work, help them build some of the skills that maybe they're lacking due to their disability. There's a lot of resources out there for that. So just certainly put that on your list of something that you're going to check on if you don't already know about that. Some of it's been off kilter due to the pandemic, but they're definitely picking back up on that and starting early. And we're talking about transition, starting this early with your student with disabilities is going to improve the outcome and hireability of your student in the future. So anyway, Allison Schaberg, Consolidated Planning Group. I'm super excited to be here with you guys today. Consolidated Planning Group, we're a holistic financial planning firm, predominantly working with special needs planning, putting special care solutions and special care plans in place for families that have a special needs loved one. So today, we're talking about transitions and tips for launching your special needs child into adulthood. So, we're going to talk a lot of the financial side of things, kind of midway through our presentation today. But at the beginning, it's some more of the soft stuff and some of the things we already know. And some of the things I kind of joke and say, I roll, I already know this, right? But as a parent, sometimes we forget this. And so when it comes to when we're putting a transition plan together, we're looking at the whole child. So it's not just the financial. So yes, we do financial, and the financial matters, and having all of those things in place that we're going to talk about in a little bit, it all matters. But really, really starting from the beginning of setting those realistic expectations, understanding the diagnosis and the challenges and the strengths, and understanding are really coming to grips and acceptance of a non-traditional path. And I'm talking to you as a professional as well as a parent with two kids with special needs. Okay, so I think that as human beings, it's kind of ingrained in our head of like all of the milestones. It starts early. I mean, it just starts with everything. If if you're graduating college, are you going to go get your master's? If you get married, are you going to have a baby? If you have one baby, you literally just had a baby, somebody's asking when you're going to have another. It's kind of like these expectations that people have, and they have them for their kids too. And then it starts in preschool. When did Johnny start talking? And when did he walk? And when did he sit up? And when did he have all of these milestones? Really, your child can't read and he's already in kindergarten? Like all this comparison. And so the non-traditional path is something that I had to grasp and understand and say it's okay. So what are we really comparing to? And it's not really fair. So kind of letting go of those things and just kind of looking at the whole child and where they are. And from a maturity level, when we're talking about ADHD or high functioning autism, there's so many different diagnoses, intellectual disabilities and things where the children, from a maturity level, are certainly several years behind their peers. Sometimes it's more than several. So just keeping all of that in mind, and really, I think keeping that in mind and developing a plan that's in the best interest of the child as opposed to the best interest of society and what society thinks that we're supposed to do. I think that's a really solid start. So keep an open mind, consider all options, consider delaying a driver's license. I know for some that we definitely have kids that will never get their driver's license, but for some, we're hopeful that they are going to be able to drive in the future. One thing that I will say, for the driver's license, there are definitively special needs rehab, like driving schools, for instance. I can think of two. Miller Driving Rehab is one. They're like in the Woodlands area. Straw Mat Driving Rehab is in another. They're relatively expensive, but the thing is this is your child and this is their life and their safety and the safety of others. So if you have a child that learns differently, if they're ADHD or they have other disabilities, just like if you or I had a stroke and we were doing rehab to drive, we may want to do this for our kids. I did this for mine. I think it's really, really important if you're going to go down that highway with your child with disabilities. Considering trade school, community college, Tawana and I were talking about this. It might be a certificate program, whatever might be a good fit. Not everybody has to go to college. College isn't a great fit for everyone. There are a lot of certificates and licenses and other things that people can get, that can have meaningful careers and make a decent living. So those things are something to think about. Also, reduce course load. This whole 12 hours as a full-time student, it is more than what a lot of kids with disabilities can handle. And so maybe it's a couple of classes. Maybe you start with one and then you add two, whatever that might be. They don't have to go just because they can't go for 12 hours. If they can take one class a semester, that's better than nothing. Okay. So consider living at home versus on campus. These are things I don't have to tell you, but a lot of our kids from the lower maturity level, they're not ready. We're setting themselves up for failure for living on campus or living in an apartment or living in a dorm or things like that. They're just not ready yet. It doesn't mean they're not ever going to be ready. They're not ready yet. So we know, like, know what you know. So I have a child that I basically know that if I send, right now, our for maybe the freshman year of a university, that might not be a good fit, but a year or two at the community college and kind of getting our feet wet with that, I think that we'll be ready for that. So it's just kind of meeting them where they are. So no comparison. Self-esteem is critical, and that is so important for the child. They're always being compared. So we talked about this comparison. They're being compared to other students and other benchmarks and all of these things. But their self-esteem and their own achievements and winning in their own right. So maybe they pass one class at the community college and they do well in that. Maybe they get a C. Who cares? They passed. Okay, they passed it. It's for credit. Um, but celebrating those wins as opposed to comparing that child to your honor student that gets straight A's and that they don't even study and it just happens overnight and those types of things. So important. Okay, so another concept that we like to talk about again, and this is not on the financial side of things, is scaffolding. So meeting them where they are, moving at their own pace. Assessing lagging skills. There's a book by Ross Green about assessing lagging skills, so that may be something that you want to check out. Um, but and then some of partnering with other organizations like TWS, like TWC, or the vocational rehab program, some of these other services and coaching services and things like that can assess some of these skills. And again, the sooner, the earlier you do that, the better, because that gives us a longer timeline that we can start working on those skills. Okay, it's not a race. Encourage independence with a safety net. And then, of course, we talk about practice, practice, practice. We're going to enlist therapists, coaches, tutors, other organizations that serve special needs. The list could go on and on of the things that we can include, but there's a lot of help out there. So just encouraging you that there is a lot of help out there. Not all of the help is expensive. There is expensive help out there, but not everything costs. So checking that out is also important. Okay, so another thing that we've run into is the practicing self-advocacy. So there is a worksheet, a self-awareness worksheet on understood.org. But teaching self-awareness, what are your child's strengths and weaknesses? I understand anytime that we have somebody on this meeting, we do have kids that have disabilities and maybe they're nonverbal, they're not communicating. So I do understand that. But for your kids, like practicing, what are their strengths? What are their weaknesses? What do I need to do to be successful? Learning about resources together and how to access those resources. One thing on the self-awareness that I did was practicing with my child. Like if we were going to a doctor's office, we're going to a specialist, and I'm in the car and I'm saying, "What do you have? Why are you here? What are you seeing me here for today? What is your history?" Like kind of, because as parents, we're always this mouthpiece for our kids, right? And so they're growing up and they need to be able to speak about who they are and what has happened to them, why they're here, and like what are you allergic to? Some of those things. And we just practiced it in the car. And I'd say, okay, well, when we get in the doctor's office and the doctor comes in, don't worry, I'll help you. But when he asks the question, I'm saying nothing. I want you to speak. And so if you need a little help, then I'll help you. But so we did this, and it sounds kind of trivial and things like that, but you'd be surprised how many kids can't even say all of that stuff, because as parents, we've been the helicopter parents and we're always speaking this for them, so they don't even have to. So also even having a little list in the phone. So if they need reminders, like maybe they don't remember all of this, but having a little note in their phone where they have a list of what the medications are that they're taking, what their diagnosis history is, or whatever. So that way, even if they're forgetting, they could pull it up on their phone, they can read that, and they can kind of talk through that. Include the teens in the 504, the IEP meetings, and practice explaining challenges and asking for help. Because those are things that, in early elementary school, we're talking preschool, we're talking elementary school. Again, we're the problem solvers. We make these things go away for our kids. But as the kids are getting older, and of course, if they have communication skills, and as expected, that they could communicate some of their challenges. So communicating these challenges in an effective way. Obviously, when we have kids with impulsive disorders or other things like that, or anger that goes from 0 to 100 really quickly, sometimes communicating these challenges doesn't go well, but just keep practicing that. I mean, they're going to get there from a maturity level. So, okay. So we talking about finding a good fit. And I just like this quote: when a flower doesn't bloom, you fix the environment in which it grows, not the flower. Okay. We just kind of move stuff around a little bit. I call it turning the knobs, tweaking. Okay, what we're doing is not working, and that's fine. It's no big deal. We're going to just turn the knobs a little bit. Okay, so the same thing, and this goes for schools, colleges, career path, work setting, the extracurricular activities, any number of those things. So just um, I call it being willing to get out of the boat. Okay. So I'm a mom and I'm willing to get out of the boat. Sometimes the boat is not going in the direction that we need it to go. And sometimes it's hard to get out of the boat because everybody else is in the boat and it makes sense to stay in the boat. But some of the most successful decisions that we've made was making a decision to get out of the boat. Because what we were doing wasn't working. It was kind of like let's back up and then continue from there. Okay, so again, I'm not an education advocate. I don't play one on TV, but when it comes to education, we already know. I think everybody knows about the ARD process and getting an IEP or 504 accommodations in the school setting. If you don't know about that, your child with disabilities, you can get testing through the school system and determine services and accommodations through the school that will help your child. Okay, and so you can request that in writing to your school. There are education advocates that can help you with this if you've had problems. But accommodations, so when I'm talking about transition, we're talking about older kids, high school, we're thinking about moving on, turning 18, those types of things. Accommodations for the ACT, SAT, AP exams, um, testing, basically testing. So here's what I would recommend. So accommodations on a college level, including community college or university, they basically want to see testing within the last 3 to 5 years. Some of them are giving more leniency on that because of COVID. And some of them, like say it's been 5 years, but you have a relationship with a psychologist or psychiatrist that's going to write a letter that goes alongside the testing saying, I've been following this child this many years. This is still going on. This is what we recommend, et cetera, et cetera. But anyway, what I'm going to tell you is set yourself up for success instead of failure. You have to have this in order to get accommodations. Just because you had a 504 or an IEP in the public school system does not mean that you're going to get accommodations on the college level. Okay, so you need to have that updated testing or a letter. I suggest a letter. A letter worked for my daughter. We had old testing and a letter, and it worked for the SAT accommodations. Okay, so getting that early, because what you don't want to do is for your child with disabilities to start the semester and they're working from behind. They don't have the accommodations that they need. You're setting them up for failure. They're already behind, and then they're frustrated, then they give up. Like it's just this domino effect. So do it early. As it relates to the SAT and ACT on their website, you can say disability accommodations, and you can download their forms with instructions on how to apply for accommodations. SAT has not been, the College Board has not been as busy as they used to be. They used to take months to approve accommodations. We got some approved, I think, in 4 weeks, which is like record time. So, but just plan in advance for that because it can be frustrating. Okay, and then we've got work accommodations. Okay, and this is where the TWS, TWC, they're going to talk to you guys more about these types of things, and really assess your child and find out what is reasonable, what's a good work environment for them, and what kind of accommodations that they need. I think we may have 2 questions in the chat box, Michelle, before I move on.
No, what we have is Tawana shared her
Okay.
contact information.
Perfect.
And then she was just helping with some explanations of some of the terms you were using.
Okay,
so that's
perfect.
there. But if anybody does have a question, feel free to put it there in the chat box and I will interrupt Allison. I don't mind.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, so main thing, just don't forget that. Do that early. The sooner you do it, the better. One thing that I will say about the SAT and the ACT, that was the thing that like, it was like a be all end all that you got to do this. And like, as parents with kids that learn differently, it's like, do I really want to sign up for this? Like, the scores aren't going to be great. Some of our kids don't test well. There's a lot of leniency right now also with the SAT and ACT of a lot of colleges universities are not requiring that. It's like it's optional. So that is something as well. And another path, just so you know, like is so the TSI is the Texas Success Initiative. This basically your student needs to pass a TSI for 4 credit classes, either at the university level or the community college level. And basically, if your child is going to enter in through a certificate program or through the community college, they don't have to do the SAT or the ACT. It's not required for community college at all. So if you're not really wanting to put yourself through that undue stress, it's not completely necessary. So again, transferring credits from a community college to a university later is going to be fine, and they're not going to require that later. Okay. So now we're kind of going to move into the financial zone. We're kind of more on the personal zone. And so how do we get started with special needs planning? So first, what we say is you want to work with a special needs planner to help you formulate your plan. If you have a child with a disability, all planners are not created equally. Okay. So there are a lot of planners out there, but most of them are not specialized in special needs. They don't understand the nuances of how you disqualify for benefits such as SSI and Medicaid and things like that. So working with a special needs planner is important to help you formulate a plan. If you have a child that is going to need care for the rest of their life, so we've talked about, disabilities of kids that maybe are, I always use the term late to the party. Okay, so we're developing slower than peers. It's okay. And then we have children that we definitively know. Okay, we definitively know that they're going to need care for the rest of their life. We've got kids that we are hopeful and optimistic, but if we were saying right now, the answer is that maybe, who knows, right? But we're hopeful and optimistic they're going to be independent or semi-independent, that they're going to go to college or going to go to a trade school or something like that. And then we have other children that we know definitively that they're going to need care for the rest of their life. They have a caregiver now, they're going to need a caregiver in the future, and when you're gone from this world, they're going to still need care. And so that's a different conversation, but that's a future care plan of making sure basically that there's enough money for funding for future care, future, whether it's residential facility, partial residential, or whatever. So what we say is gather all your necessary planning documents, and basically what that looks like in a nutshell is everything financial. This is any investment statements, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, 401ks, 403bs, pensions, life insurance, disability, long-term care, any benefits that you have through work. So basically, if you live too long, if you die too soon, or if you become disabled along the way, and if I'm going to be retired for 25 to 35 years, it's basically anything that you have that falls into that category are the necessary planning documents. In addition to those necessary planning documents, if you have a will, a trust, a healthcare power of attorney, all of those things would also be included in the planning documents. Then we also talk about developing a letter of intent. And we've done whole presentations on the letter of intent itself. But basically what a letter of intent is I call it a family love letter. Okay. So this is mom or dad. You know everything. You eat, sleep, and breathe your loved one, right? You know when they were diagnosed, what they were diagnosed with, all of the medical history, what schools they've gone to, what makes them tick, what makes them melt down, all of their educational background, everything. Well, it's all in your head, right? So, and we don't really think about that because we just know this. We could just spout this off at any time. But if you are incapacitated today or deceased, does everybody know what you know? And sometimes what we see is even parents, like one parent may do more of this than the other. Maybe one works, maybe one handles, caring for the kids, or vice versa. So anyway, a letter of intent, and we actually have a template for this for the families that we work with. It's form fillable, but basically it's a document that has everything all about your child and what somebody needs to know, because you can just know that if something happened to you or their other parent, it would be devastating. Okay, it would be devastating, but to take somebody that's a future caregiver that's trying to figure out what they don't know. So this is their Bible. Okay. You're just giving them this Bible about your loved one so that they know how to step into your shoes and what we need to do next without trying to piece it all together. Okay. So many people don't have a letter of intent. Just put that on your list that in the next 3 months, you'd like to get that moving. Okay. You can create it yourself on a Word document. You can get a template from us and you can do it. It is emotional. You're putting a lot of information in there. It is filling it in. And then we want you to update this maybe twice a year. Okay. So, and hey, don't forget to tell somebody where it's at. So you could do all this work and then you don't tell anybody where it's at. So they don't know. So that would be an important thing to maybe put with your will or your trust or some other important documents that you have. Okay. And then we really want you to just formulate a vision of how you hope things will look for you and your special needs child in the future. And this also includes, your vision and your hope for retirement as well. Because a lot of times as families, we're so busy caring for others that we kind of put ourselves on the back burner. So if you're going to spend, 25 to 40 years working in your adult life, we hope to have some kind of relaxing or fun or enjoyable retirement. We hope to enjoy some of the fruits of our labor later. So having balance. So if you have a child that's going to need care for the rest of their life, having some type of balance plan in place, having a respite plan in place so that way you actually can have a break or can have vacations or other things like that. I think all of those things are really important long term. And then also what we've seen is that there's so many families that are so caught up in the day-to-day that's busy. Life is busy. We got full-time jobs. A marriage is a full-time job. We got kids that are full-time jobs. And then you have a special needs child that's a full-time job. We have all these full-time jobs. And so some of this planning and stuff really kind of gets, it really gets put on the back burner. But what we've actually seen is, I've literally had people call and say, I'm 76 and I'm caring for, my 56-year-old special needs child. And I'm realizing that I'm slowing down or I'm not as well as I used to be, or my spouse just died. And I'm really realizing I can't do as much as I used to be able to do. Even though it didn't happen overnight, the epiphany happened overnight of, oh my goodness, I'm 76 years old and I can't do this forever. In fact, I need help. So that's why we want you to plan early and kind of think about those things. And that goes back to your vision and what you want and what that time frame is for you. So I have a lot of families that say for their kids that need care for the rest of their life, well, I want to look at partial residential care starting at age 25 or there's certain ages that they want to look at that. So we can help with that. So who's going to care for my child when I'm gone? We want to develop a future care plan. It'll answer those questions. I like to tell people, and we don't work for Brookwood, Marbridge, or Daymark, or any of the other facilities that are out there. We don't necessarily endorse them or anything, but what we want to tell you is if you have a child that will need care for the rest of their life, consider touring some of these facilities and getting your name on the wait list. Some of these wait lists are 5 years or longer. So when that person is 76 years old and tells me I need help right now, I tell them to call Brookwood and then they're on the list for 5 years. Well, they needed help today. So getting yourself on the list earlier, if you come up, you can say no, but at least you have that option. You have the option to decline. Okay. And then also make careful considerations before naming siblings as future caregivers. And I stress this a lot, just like you, when you were in your 20s, early 20s, mid 20s, 30s, you had hopes and dreams. All people have hopes and dreams. I want to go to college. I want to go to work. I want to have a great career. I want to get married. I want to have kids. I want to have a house. Whatever those hopes and dreams are, everybody's are different. But if you've got siblings of your special needs individual that are relatively close in age, if something happened to you and then they would be named as the future caregiver. So what we like to see, which is a better option, is having basically a special needs trust where there's actually money in the trust that funds care for your loved one. And the sibling can be a trustee. You can have a corporate trustee, but basically the sibling can be a loving sibling and be a part of the person's life, but that individual isn't a burden to the sibling, and the sibling isn't saying yes in an obligatory manner. and putting their life on hold in the meantime. Okay. So again, what I'm saying is not that, that the sibling's not involved, but what if the sibling is the trustee and there's enough money in the trust to pay for care, to coordinate care, transition care, day hab, rehab, whatever that is, instead of the sibling having the complete, and I'm not using the word burden, but it could be, you got a kid that's 20 or 30 years old and they're dating and somebody says, wait, you got custody of your special needs brother? That's too much for me. Like things like that really do happen. So that's why we talk about that. Okay. How will my child's care be funded? So we want to preserve eligibility for state and federally funded programs. What I'm talking about is SSI and Medicaid, and then basically Social Security, Disability, and Medicare. So we have topics about this in itself, and we could spend the whole hour talking about SSI and Medicaid and Social Security, Disability, and Medicare. Basically, SSI and Medicaid. SSI is a means-based program. Many of our families don't qualify for SSI and Medicaid. Their children that are clearly disabled don't qualify for SSI and Medicaid prior to the child turning 18 because it's based off of the family's household assets. So basically, if you're married, if your assets are over $3,000, if you're single, if your assets are over $2,000, then your child doesn't qualify for SSI. Okay. So there are some Medicaid buy-in programs and MDCP and some other ways that you might qualify for Medicaid, but SSI prior to 18, many people don't qualify. So what happens is a lot of people don't even apply for SSI when their child turns 18 because they just assume that they're not going to get it. So the magical thing that happens is when your child turns 18, SSI is based off of their assets, not yours. Okay. So again, as you're transitioning and you're moving in this direction, write this down. The main thing you want to make sure is that you don't have more than $2,000 of assets in your child's name. Okay. And that's all sources, all accounts. It's not per account, it's all sources. So in the example that you do have more than $2,000 in your child's name at this time, there's no such thing as like hiding money from the Social Security Administration or things like that. I've heard everything over the years. Okay. But basically, you can spend down those assets for the benefit of that individual. Maybe they need an iPad, maybe they need a computer, maybe they need an iPhone, maybe they need a car, maybe it's tutoring services. I mean, come on, we can come up with all kinds of expenses that our kids use. And so as you're spending that down, you're just going to want to keep receipts for that. So that way you don't get in trouble with the Social Security Administration when you go to apply. Okay. Another thing is those assets above $2,000 can be placed into an ABLE account. So we'll talk about that more in a minute. So a lot of people say, my child's getting Social Security. Very few people's children are getting Social Security. Okay. Most of them are getting SSI. Okay. Now, your child could be getting Social Security or Social Security Disability or RSDI. Okay. So if you are already disabled through the Social Security Administration, or if you or their other parent is already retired through the Social Security Administration, then they would be getting Social Security in the way of RSDI. So again, I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this, but what you need to know that like write this down is you want to establish that your child is disabled with the Social Security Administration and that their disability started prior to age 22. Okay, that's the magic age 22, that their disability started prior to age 22. If you establish that, then your child can be a DAC. That's what they call them with the Social Security Administration, and a disabled adult child under the parent's record. And basically what that means is if you have a DAC, your child is entitled to 50% of the higher Social Security benefit at retirement, or 50% of the disability benefit. Okay. That's while you're alive. And upon your death, if your child remains disabled, then they will be entitled to 75% of your Social Security benefit or your disability benefit for the rest of their life. Okay, so that's a whole nother story. We'll talk about that more later, but I just wanted to explain because most people get confused, SSI and Social Security. So Social Security is called SSDI, it's called Social Security Disability, and it's called Social Security. It's called all three of those things. And then basically the other one's called SSI. And it's just very, very confusing to everyone. And if it's confusing to you, you're certainly not alone. Okay, so another way that we're going to fund future care is through life insurance and a special needs trust. So basically there's two places that we can have money above the $2,000, and that's in an ABLE account, a 529A, we'll talk about in a second, and you can have it in a special needs trust. Most people want to know, well, how do I get the money in the special needs trust? Yes, I have retirement assets, but if me and my husband are going to spend 25 to 35 years in retirement, we're probably going to need our retirement assets. So how are we going to get the money that we need into a special needs trust? And what most people do, if they don't have the current assets to fund the trust, is they fund it with life insurance. So basically, they fund their child's care out of their current assets, just like you always have, and you fund your child's care out of your retirement assets in the future while you're still alive. But upon your death, there's a life insurance contract in place on your life, and the beneficiary is the special needs trust for the benefit of your child, is basically how that works. Okay. Michelle, do we have a question? We're good.
No, we have more resources.
Okay, perfect.
I lost it. Hold on one second. Okay. So there's some more resources for us from the Texas Workforce Solutions and the Vocational Rehabilitation Services.
Yes.
Some of the counselors that can be contacted. And that was posted by Ms. Chambers. So thank you very much for that.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And I haven't looked at that yet, but we do also have some connector resources. Like if you've had trouble with VR, or you haven't been able to connect, or you didn't get a phone call back, we definitely have some definitive people that you can call for sure, and can direct you on that. So you can reach out to us for that as well. Okay. How do I protect my child's government benefits? So we talked about this a little bit, making sure that you have your assets and your child's assets in the appropriate buckets. Okay. Again, making sure that your child doesn't have assets more than $2,000 is important. One of the things that we want to do is we want to ensure special needs family members' name is not set up as a beneficiary on any life insurance, investment, or a bank account. I'm going to say that again. We want to ensure that a special needs family member is not set up as a beneficiary on any life insurance, investment, or bank account as their named individual. So in the example that the person's name is John Smith, your special needs child's name is John Smith, what happens, and if you've done this, that's okay, you can fix it, okay? But what happens is a lot of people, they say, okay, I have life insurance, and if I die, my spouse is going to be the beneficiary. But if my spouse is already dead and gone, then that's easy. I'm going to divide it equally amongst my children, and we name the children specifically. That's what a lot of people do, and it's wrong, okay? And the reason that it's wrong, it's wrong for a number of things. So number one, if you have minor children, it's wrong for this reason. So minor children without disabilities, it is wrong because if you name them and you die and your child is a minor, then basically that money is going to sit in trust until they turn 18. So nobody can really get to it until they turn 18. And then guess what? Then your child gets all of the money at age 18, and it's a bad idea. Okay, so I know all of your kids are smart just like mine, but what I will tell you is kids getting large sums of money at age 18 is a disaster. It's a disaster. Okay, so that's why you don't want to do it that way. The reason we don't name our special needs child, okay, again, the minor thing that I just mentioned, but basically what happens in that regard, because remember, when they turn 18, it's based off of their assets. Well, if you leave it to your special needs child, it sits in trust till they turn 18, then it goes directly to their name, not their trust, not their special needs trust. And if you remember, the places that you can have money above $2,000 is an ABLE account or a special needs trust. So if you don't leave it to a special needs trust, then you are automatically, accidentally disqualifying your child from SSI and Medicaid. Okay, so there's a way to do this, and basically there's a couple of things. So you can't leave life insurance proceeds to an ABLE account. Everybody asks me that question all the time, so I'll just tell you that right now. You can't leave life insurance proceeds to an ABLE account, but what you can do is leave life insurance proceeds to a special needs trust. And furthermore, if you don't have a trust already set up, what you can do is you can have language in your will that is a testamentary trust for each of your kids, a testamentary trust for your non-disabled kids, and a testamentary special needs trust for your disabled child. And basically, instead of naming John Smith outright, it says that the benefits are going to go to the testamentary special needs trust for the benefit of John Smith. So basically what that means is you don't have a special needs trust now, but when you die, the special needs trust is going to form, and those life insurance proceeds are going to go to the special needs trust and not disqualify your child from SSI and Medicaid. I know it's confusing, and I can talk more about that in the future if you have more confusion on that. And then the last thing is, and I say this a lot because we've got a lot of grandparents and family members that love our family, and a lot of them are they're quiet. They don't talk about finances. They don't want to talk about that. Then grandma and grandpa die. Something happens, and they want to help, and they help by leaving John Smith a large sum of money. And that's fine. We want grandma and grandpa to leave John money for his trust, right? But we want it to go to his trust and not to him directly, because even if grandma and grandpa didn't tell you and they leave that money to your child, it could cause them to lose their eligibility for SSI and Medicaid. And it likely will, unless you get a court order and you get intervention to direct it to a trust. Is basically it will affect the SSI and Medicaid. Okay. All right. So when do I need a special needs trust and guardianship? So when we're talking about transition, these are things that every time, this is something that comes up in the subject every single time. So again, a special needs trust is going to preserve the eligibility while also providing resources for a special needs child, because we all know that their care needs are going to be much greater than $2,000 or much greater than what you can even have in an ABLE account. Guardianship can be applied for 6 months prior to the child turning 18. So we always hear about guardianship, healthcare power of attorney, and then of course, supported decision making. We hear about that all the time in the state of Texas. So guardianship, you're going to go through an attorney. There's going to be a guardian ad litem. Some of you may already have guardianship. It can be a very emotional process. Some of us don't need guardianship. You got to, again, ADHD, high functioning autism, other disabilities, but maybe they're not intellectual disabilities. They might not need guardianship. As I said earlier, they may be late to the party. They might need a little bit of help. The healthcare power of attorney, the power of attorney would be good, which, by the way, I also recommend for other 18-year-olds that don't have disabilities. When you're sending a kid off to college, this is a smart thing to have in place in the event of an accident or an illness or something like that. Technically, if you don't have that healthcare power of attorney, technically they could not talk to you. And if your child was at war with you or whatever, and they didn't want you to know anything, so anyway, it's just worth having. We've seen some disasters with that. So as it relates to the supported decision making, many attorneys don't love the supported decision making agreement, like a power of attorney and a healthcare power of attorney alongside of a supported decision making agreement might be better. And many people, again, don't need guardianship. So a person, when you have guardianship of a loved one with a disability, you are taking away a lot of their rights: a right to vote, a right to drive, a right to get married. There's a lot of things. So working with a qualified attorney on these matters, they're going to help walk you through this process and help you get to what is the right fit for you. So what I'm telling you is the right fit for you may be very different than the right fit for everybody else on this meeting. Okay. And they're going to help you by understanding what the disability is, what the shortcomings are, what the needs are, and what might be best for you going forward. Now, one thing I do want to tell you, again, 6 months prior, you can start this process. But one thing that we have seen is we see a lot of special needs kids that stay in the public school, which they can until age 22. And so not having anything in place could cause it to where basically the school wouldn't work with you on the ART or the IEP or things like that. And honestly, I have to say, I see a lot of really great schools and really great, I see a lot of schools that really work with people. I think it's few and far between where they're going to give you a hard time, but legally, your child turns 18, you don't have these documents, they technically do not have to talk to you. So don't put yourself or your child in that situation, I guess is the main thing that I'm trying to say. Okay, these things, the last thing I want to say on this, I get people like to do it themselves. I get people that like to save money, and we all like to save money. But when it comes to your special needs child and planning and these documents, this is not a do-it-yourselfer type of thing. And I also would say, and I'm not raining on anything, these legal plans that you might have through your group, your employer group, or things like that, or some kind of service, they typically don't have special needs planners. They typically are attorneys. They typically have generalists. You don't need a generalist, you need a specialist. You really do want to work with a special needs planning attorney on that. The laws are changing all the time. There's a special needs UT planning conference every year that we attend, the attorneys attend. And basically, if the attorney isn't at that conference, you don't want them dealing with this because the laws change. And so they could accidentally not know of a provision that you need to have in your document that would make it not qualify. So just keep that in mind. Okay, ABLE accounts, I'm going to run through this relatively quickly. ABLE accounts are through as a 529A. And so basically to have a 529A, it's similar to a 529C, but it's for people with disabilities whose disability started prior to age 26. You can put $15,000 a year into an ABLE account. It's not going to count against you for SSI. Qualified disability expenses are not taxable, and earnings on distributions for non-qualified expenses are subject to ordinary income tax and 10% penalty, just like an IRA or an early withdrawal from a 401k or a non-college or a non-education withdrawal from a 529C. Okay. Tax-free growth and investments that can be changed by the participant twice a year. And you can roll it over to another family member that is eligible. So for people that already have a 529C, a couple of things that you should know is a 529C, you're the owner. So if there's money sitting in a 529C for your individual with special needs, as long as you don't make a distribution to that individual with special needs, it's not going to count against them for SSI. But in 2018, there was a new law that was passed that you can convert your 529C to a 529A if you need to. Okay. So the cool thing about the A is that it can pay for college and tutoring and education and all kinds of stuff. But basically anything that could be perceived as achieving a better life for the individual with a disability. So, I mean, if that's an iPad, if that's a vacation, if that is, housing or rent or food and shelter, it could be basic. It's really broad what you can pay for out of an ABLE account. The basic thing that you need to know is that if there's more than $100,000 in the ABLE account, then you will disqualify for SSI. Okay, so only up to $100,000. And the other thing that you need to know is that there is a Medicaid payback. So a clawback, a drawback, a Medicaid payback. If your loved one dies and they have an ABLE account, the remaining amount in the account could go back to Medicaid. There will be a Medicaid clawback, and anything that is left over would go to the estate of the individual with disabilities. Okay. All right. So I think that's a duplicate. So let me go here. Okay. So items that an ABLE account can pay for, and an ABLE account. So we get the question all the time: why should I have a special needs trust and an ABLE account? Do I really need both? The answer is yes. And the reason that the answer is yes is because an ABLE account can pay for housing and rent, and a special needs trust can't. Okay. A special needs trust can buy a house outright, but it can't pay for housing and rent. Okay. A special needs trust, you can have an unlimited amount of money in a special needs trust and not disqualify from Social Security from SSI, but you can only have $100,000 in an ABLE account. So if you have an individual that needs care for the rest of their life, look, $40,000 a year for 30 years, that's $1.2 million of how much money a person might need. And that's just a very basic minimum existence, right? So the reason you need both is because $100,000 is clearly not enough to fund their future care. Okay. So there's just a list of some of these things. Here, the next list is items that a special needs trust can pay for. Again, it's a big, long list that ABLE accounts and special needs trusts can pay for, but basically a special needs trust is not paying for food and shelter. Okay, so if you're needing to pay rent, if you're needing to pay housing. And a lot of the question comes up a lot of, can you pay for like residential care or partial residential care out of a special needs trust? And that question, that answer is it depends. And it's a gray area because it depends on how the facility bills. If they bill it as medical, or if they bill it as room and board. Like there's all kinds of different ways that facilities can bill it, which will depend on whether or not you can pay for it out of a trust. Okay. All right, so we are getting to the end here. So if you've got any questions, definitely put them in the chat box. As it relates to transitioning, things that should be on your radar, your planning radar, we've kind of talked about a lot of them. But so how to develop a comprehensive special needs care plan, we can help you with that. Determining future care costs and estimates, we also do that as well. The Texas waivers and interest list, okay? We hear about this all the time. We hear about people complaining about how long the list is and how they're never going to get help. And they've been on the list for 10, 12, 14 years. I do actually have families that we serve that actually are getting services, so I'm happy to report that. But so if you're new to Texas, or if you're not new to Texas and you didn't know, in order to get help with disability services, for your children, there are waivers out there. The interest lists are very, very long, but you want to get your child on the list sooner versus later. And I have no way of knowing where everybody's from here, but like Harris Center, it used to be MHMRA. Okay. That is the local authority that you call, Harris Center, if you live in Harris County, to get yourself on these lists. And then also there is an 800 number for CLASS, because CLASS is a different list that you're going to get yourself on. So calling the Harris Center and doing that. If you're in Fort Bend County, that the local authority is going to be Texana. And you can look on the HHS website to see who your local authority is if you're not in Harris or Fort Bend County. Okay, get on those lists. One waiver that I want to tell you about that a lot of people don't know is a YES waiver. There is a YES waiver in the state of Texas. There is not a waiting list, and this is basically a wraparound program for these are basically middle school to high school kids. I think it goes up until age 18 for kids with this could be emotional disturbances, any depression, anxiety, ODD, all of I call it the alphabet soup of initials of mental health. Okay. And so it's a wraparound program. The YES waiver, again, you should familiarize yourself with that. You should Google that. If your child or anybody you know, runaways, they get in fights at school, they've been, dabbling with drugs, they're, the oppositional defiant, kind of any number of those things. This could be a really, really great program for them. And again, most people don't know about it, and there's no waiting list for this. So get help if you need it. So SSI, SSDI, we talked about the differences, know when to apply. I didn't say this, but I said when your child turns 18, you can apply for SSI the month that your child turns 18, the month of their birthday. So the appointments are backed up. Social Security is not meeting with people face-to-face unless it's an emergency. They're meeting by phone. And so if your child's turning 18 in July, I suggest calling in April and getting an appointment for July. Okay, call in advance and get an appointment, because if you call in July, they're probably going to tell you it's going to be August or September before they're going to talk to you. Okay. We talked about ABLE accounts, beneficiary designation, special needs trust. We talked about touring residential and partial residential facilities early on, maybe at 15, a little bit earlier because of those waiting lists. We talked guardianship, POA, supported decision-making, post-high school options, education options. We actually do have a Zoom. It's on our YouTube channel where we did like a panel. We had panel of all of these post-high school programs, certificate programs. Some were university, some were community college, that serve the special needs community. And if you haven't looked at this and researched this, you will be shocked and surprised, pleasantly surprised about how many great programs there are out there for our loved ones with disabilities. There's a lot of them. So really, I can say that there's something out there for everyone, no matter where you are in your journey with the disability or intellectual disabilities. So definitely check that out. And we already talked about the waiting list. Okay, so I see we got some stuff in the chat box. We're coming around the bend, so I'm going to just turn that over to you for questions, Michelle.
Yes. First of all, there's a question here. Well, not really a question, but they say they have a regular 529 savings plan for their special needs child. He's high functioning, but with autism and ADHD. What do you think about that, Allison?
So I get that question weekly, and so you can keep the 529, and if the child doesn't go to college, if you have another child, then you can change the beneficiary of that 529 to your other child. Otherwise, you can convert that 529C to a 529A, but remember, you can only do $15,000 a year. So if you've got $100,000 sitting in there, you need to get going on that like yesterday, okay? So the cool thing about the ABLE account is the ABLE account can pay for college and a myriad of other things. An ABLE account can pay for tutoring, and a lot of our ADHD kids need tutoring. A 529C can pay a portion for private school, but a 529C does not pay for tutoring. So as far as a 529A, there's going to be a much longer list of things that you can pay for out of the A for that individual, and you can pay for college. And so for many families in your situation, they don't know yet if college is on the radar or not, or how that's going to work out. So A, you can change the beneficiary of the 529 to another child if you have one. B, you can convert it to an ABLE account. But what will happen is if you're trying, we don't know yet if your child is going to qualify for SSI when they turn 18 or not. It's going to depend, right? You're not there yet. But what will happen is if you keep it in a 529C and you make a distribution to the child, it could affect their SSI. Okay, so you're the owner, not the child, in the 529C. But if you make a distribution to the child, it could be considered income. It depends on how the distribution goes. It starts getting gray.
The other thing in chat, they're asking if we can get a copy of the slides and the YouTube presentation, which will come in an email, correct?
Yes. So this is being recorded today. So the slides and the recording will be sent out to everyone. And I think in that email, I think that there is a link to the YouTube channel. And also, if you want to chat with us about your unique situation, you can click a link right in there and schedule an appointment with us. So you don't even have to call for that. You can, it's all electronic. So, and we're happy to chat with you. Everybody's situation is different. We really try when we're kind of going through this to be broad, because we know everybody's, so vastly different, but so I hope we've covered your needs. Is that it?
Yeah, that's all I have for you today.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you, everyone. I got 1 o'clock, and we scheduled from 12 to 1, so we did good. Thank you, Tawana, for having us today. I'm happy to work with you going forward. Again, I can't stress enough on the services that are out there for our kids as far as helping them become employable and getting work and skills and training and things that you don't necessarily have to pay for out of pocket. So I am excited about sharing those resources with our families and having people get going with that for sure. So thanks so much, everyone. Tawana, did you have anything else that you wanted to share? Okay, we got her muted. All right. So thanks so much.
There it is.
There you go.
Thank you guys and everybody for participating today. I hope it was good information for you. We have another series that's doing with college planning that's going to be held on April the 6th at noon again, where we discuss how to plan for college. We have one coming up in May also, and then I will have that information out. If you need any contact or any information as far as your VR contacts, as far as me as a navigator or the navigator that's in your area, feel free to give me a contact, give me a call or email me is the best. I left my information in the box. And if y'all see anything that you're interested in, as far as other information, please feel free to reach out to me there and I can find someone to present that information to you, something that you may be interested in. I hope everyone has a great rest of the week. And thank you for joining.
Yes, and I just saw one more thing. You're going to get the recording, and it has the slides. And so when you click on it, everything will be there. You'll have everything together for the recording and the slides. So again, thank you so much. You guys have a great afternoon, and we'll definitely catch up soon. Bye now.